Hey, it's Rick Miller, and this is
Xing the Gap.
In this episode, I'll be speaking with Steve Anthony and Malaika Astorga. For Canadian Gen Xers like me, Steve Anthony is a household name as one of the early stars of much music. If you're listening to the audio version, you'll have to imagine the mullet. Steve then cut his locks and spent the next decade hosting CP24 Breakfast, helping it become the #1 morning TV show in Canada. Today, he's joined by Malaika Astorga, a Latinx BCom graduate from Concordia and co-founder of Also Cool, an online arts and music platform plus podcast. She's also a strategist for an LA-based media company and a social media consultant for a ton of artists. As three generations, we riff on Mexican Canadians in Quebec, VJs at the dawn of the internet, the Montreal-Toronto gap, how music tethers generations, how algorithms create niches, how social media changes businesses, dealing with declining relevance, taking TikTok seriously, and trying to stump a pop culture icon in a game show.
Not only do I know everything I know everything you know.
Oh no!
Xing the Gap.
First, I will start by welcome you, Steve and Malaika.
Thank you.
Well, hi. I'm going to wax poetic here that I won't even say it's a mutual admiration society, but you are certainly one of the most talented people that I know.
Thank you.
The fact that you asked me on this new little venture is very flattering.
Well, you've had me on your other ventures, and maybe we could start there just with a brief little intro for those of you who may not know you as well as we do. Maybe I'll start with you, Malaika. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your story,
Sure.
and maybe touch on your cultural heritage as well.
So my name's Malaika Astorga. I am in the very weird generation between millennial and Gen Z, so I get a bit of both. I have worked in online publishing for about 4-ish years now. I've worked in social media for just as long. I currently work as a strategist for a media company in LA, as well as consulting for individual creatives. And outside of that, I run my own magazine called Also Cool Mag. We have an online publication working on the print edition, pandemic, as well as a podcast and event series. And then other than that, in the free time that I have, which I don't know how much I do anymore, I'm an illustrator and a writer, and I live in Montreal. Oh, and I'm Mexican Canadian, and it's something that I try and incorporate into all of my work, as well as just being an advocate for the queer community in digital spaces.
Thank you, Malaika. I appreciate it. And I'll pass it over to you, Steve. Maybe just what's your story in a nutshell?
Wow. Been broadcasting for 40 plus years. That would include radio and television. Not much of a journeyman. A lot of people who've been in radio travel from coast to coast to coast to coast to coast. But I was fortunate enough to only kind of have my successes in my career in Timmins to start, Kitchener, very short periods of time, and then between Montreal and Toronto. When I say my celebrity hood is just below petty thieves. So there's petty thieves and then me. But I was almost one of the original DJs on Much Music, which is obviously culturally iconic to all Canadians. I was in the last 10 years, except I've been off TV for about 10 years as the morning show host for CP24 Breakfast, which ended up being very successful in Toronto. And if it was successful in Toronto, hence by virtue of population and viewership, the #1 show in the country, which is when we hit that mark, I decided that it was time to kind of move on to something else, only because, and this is, I won't bore you with the details, but the funny thing was I knew I had to leave because I didn't want to have to be in a particular place to do something. I didn't mind waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That wasn't a problem. The problem was that I had to be in Toronto. I didn't want to be in Toronto. And funny enough, you want to do a live TV show in Toronto, you got to be in Toronto. It turns out that's not true, because as soon as COVID hit, people realized you could be anywhere doing anything, and they fully accepted it. There was no choice in the matter. So it's kind of weird that I might still be doing that. But nonetheless, I'm out in east of Toronto, on an island called Prince Edward County now. And I have a number of other ventures. I made sure for the last 5 years of my career on TV that I put my fingers in a whole bunch of different pies. And so I'm still kind of running those companies or consulting for companies, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, thank you both. I'm going to pick up on the Toronto thing because I'm a former Montrealer. I was born and raised there, spent 30 years there, married, and my partner was from Ontario, so we decided to raise a family in Toronto. I know, Steve, you used to work at CJAD in Montreal. You have roots there too. And Malaika, you're based in Montreal. Mm-hmm. The first gap I want to kind of touch on is between Montreal and Toronto. And I've lived on both sides of it, but I wonder, Malaika, if you could speak from your lived experience. What is the cultural gap you perceive between those two cities?
Well, so I'm actually from Ottawa. And when you're from Ottawa and you graduate from high school and you want to leave, you either have Montreal or Toronto, unless you want to go very far. And I had actually gotten into OCAD as well as Concordia. So I thought about this a lot.
Right.
And I'm very glad I chose Montreal because to me, especially at the time, Montreal seemed a lot more interconnected. There seemed like a lot more community support and ability to integrate into community. There's also just the fact that it's like way cheaper, housing is more accessible. And also the fact that I grew up in French immersion, I spoke French. When I had traveled back and forth a bit more during my first and second years, I found that there's the really striking difference between people is in Montreal, the first thing people ask you is not what you do. It's like, how have you been today? What have you been up to lately? Like, it's not, what is your job? What is your social standing in relation to me? Whereas in Toronto, as in many cities where you have to work a lot, everyone's like, so what do you do? Like, I'm more interested in if we get along as people. And if you want to tell me about your work, you're more than welcome to, but I'd like to know who you are personality wise first.
Yeah, that's interesting. Steve, I want to find out what you think about this, but just preface it with, I grew up in Ville-Mont-Royal in Tanimont-Royal. I was lucky enough to speak 3 languages growing up, so I felt very comfortable in Montreal. I used to think as a kid that Toronto had no trees, and now I live here.
Really?
You just, whatever, you grew up with these stupid blinkers. I had a lot of blinkers when I was a kid, right? And so I grew up thinking that Toronto didn't have a soul, and I now live here in a neighborhood in Toronto, right near the subway, and it's a great place to live. It truly is a great place to raise kids. So I've broken through a lot of that stuff. Steve, you've been on both sides. Now you've sort of fled Toronto-ish. Yeah. What do you think about this?
Despite the fact that I have not lived and worked in Montreal since 2002, I still refer to it, and maybe it's just me, my loyalty. I still refer to it as home. I still say still have family in Montreal. I'd say, okay, I'm coming home. And I refer to it that way. I guess that extends to things like, if you're from Montreal, genetically, you have to be a Habs fan. There's no option, as much as you could be in Toronto.
Or an Expos fan. Sorry, I was an Expos fan.
Right. I also found a growing animosity between Anglos and Francophones that I just became resentful of. I mean, I could live in it, I could work in it, I could function in it. I just thought it unnecessary. And I understand cultural swing. I understand how the pendulum of Anglo versus Franco, and how Anglos were in control of Quebec for the longest time. It made no sense. So the pendulum was way over here, and then whatever it was, the PQ got into power. And from there, the pendulum just swung way over here. Instead of it should have kind of come back and done this balance thing, and that's what pendulums do. It just stayed way over here.
You know what, Steve? I'm going to bring it to Malaika because you said you're Mexican Canadian. You have there's another component to that the Anglo-Franco debate, and we're not going to solve les deux solitudes in this podcast. Like, based on what Steve has said and what your current experience of Montreal is, as someone who's younger, as someone who identifies as queer, as someone who identifies as Mexican Canadian, Quebec gets a bad rap outside of Canada sometimes for celebrating only la différence québécoise and not being as accommodating to otherness. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's certainly true. That's not to say that there aren't efforts to try and like subvert that in different ways, but I mean, I don't know that many other Mexican people here. I don't think there is like any representation of us generally. I'm like, where are they? Like, like, whenever I find another Mexican person, I'm like, you are going to be my friend, because I don't know where we are.
Any other Mexican Canadians in the room?
Wow.
Yeah, seriously. And when we find each other, we're like, oh my God, wow, hi.
Montreal and Toronto. The rivalry goes way further than the Habs and the Leafs. With their different colonial roots, they seem to have different ways of viewing cultural diversity. Montreal takes after France, where being Français, liberté, fraternité, égalité comes first, before any particular ethnicity. It's a bit like the American melting pot, which is no surprise because both of those republics were born out of revolution at around the same time. Toronto, however, with its British colonial heritage, is less of a melting pot and more of a cultural mosaic. I'm not advocating for one or the other. Both have sucked in their own systematically oppressive ways. I'm just saying that there are things that divide us and things that connect us. And if you grew up in Canada in the 1980s, what connected young people, no matter which city you lived in, were music videos on TV. You and your peers like Erica M., Christopher Ward, Michael Williams, Master T, not to be confused with Mr. T, other 80s icon, but like you guys were...
They're the same person.
You guys were these, as you kind of said, that you're, low-level celebrity under petty thief. But to me, You were icons. And can you tell us a little bit about like that? Do you see yourself as a cultural pioneer a little bit back then? Or were you like, what the fuck was I doing?
No, both. The latter. What the fuck was I doing? In retrospect, if we collectively to do what we did then, now it would be old hat, uninteresting, uninspiring. I mean, literally, when we started, it was the roots of the internet. I mean, really nothing. I mean, it was a big deal when we got email in the offices. Okay, so just to put that in context. So anything that happened, anything that we did was interesting to people who were watching. Anything. Like, I'm going to go and take cabbages and throw them into a fan, and we'll just do that on TV. And to somebody's home, they would go, "Wow, that was cool! He threw cabbages into a fan
on TV."
Okay, you know what we're going to do tomorrow? We're going to throw orange peels into a fan. Yeah. So we could get away with anything, and it would be interesting. The other part was that there was no outlet for people to see who their favorite artists were, and Much Music facilitated that. So all those people that they heard on the radio, all of a sudden they got to see, they got to do an interview, they got to see their videos, became integral. I mean, who really wants to see a Aha Take On Me video again? But the first time you saw it, you went, wow, this is art. This is so great. This is so wonderful. It was so influenced you. And it wasn't just a song on the radio. You actually got to see what they look like, got to do. And they came in for an interview about the video when it was launched. And it was a big deal. And all of a sudden, there was this tether between all Canadian youth. There was this cultural thread, coast to coast, of young people from 6 years of age to 25, much launched in 84, 85, something like that. That is to this day tethered.
I love that word tether because I think of the kids who grew up in the 60s had American Bandstand, and Dick Clark was a tether for a lot of people, and everyone would listen to the same hit song because it was a song on the radio. You'd buy the 45 or whatever, and there was a tether. Whereas I would say, Malaika, in your generation, even though you're on the cusp of both generations, there are very few things in the world of the internet that tether us all together, and especially young people. Do they connect around the same things anymore musically? Because I know they connect around things politically.
Yeah, definitely. It just happens in really different ways. Online, I think what's really interesting is like So you platform to platform, but then you also have all of the individual algorithms. And what we've kind of gone from is like a chronological feed to hyper specific algorithms that kind of put you in your own echo chamber of stuff, which most of the time actually does not turn out very well. But I have found on TikTok in particular, my algorithm is scary. Like I work in social media. It's my job. I get it. I don't like it. I find algorithms like kind of terrifying, but my TikTok algorithm is great because it gives me music I like. It shows me people who I might be friends with in Montreal, and it shows me interesting things that I couldn't have found otherwise. And there's not really the same sweeping trends or, just popular things to do or who to listen to or whatever per generation anymore, just because we have access to literally everything. But instead, there are more niche pockets and niche communities who in some ways are still just as engaged. It's just in different places.
From cabbages to algorithms, we've come a long way.
Yeah.
Okay, quick question. Song that changed your life?
There was this music video called Fish Heads by a group called Barnes and Barnes. It was just two guys, and one guy actually happened to be Bill Mooney, who played Will Robinson on Lost in Space. Fish heads, holy, fish heads. And it was along the lines of Dr. Demento, and it was just this ridiculous song. And I got access to it, and that to me represented the outskirts of what I like, what I grew up with, what I was attracted to, were Mothers of Invention and Captain Beefheart and really outside of the box stuff. And so Barnes and Barnes, there was a video and I was able to play it. I got Rhino Records from Los Angeles to send up a copy of it, and I played it on Much Music. And to me, that changed everything. Is that there's this whole other fringe world there that people don't know. It will never be popular, but it exists over there. And so I went, that's great. As much as I have to live in a pop world or a categorized world, there's this fringe world over there that has no rules or regulations, and that's why.
That's a great story.
Give me 5 minutes, I'll think of another one.
Well, no, that's great. You were outside the box, but within such a box, right? Like the television was such a literal box. I love that. Okay, Malaika, you've had time. You've had now 3 minutes to think about this.
Yeah.
Did I talk that long?
So I kind of wanted to pick something cooler or maybe more underground, but honestly, Paramore's Brick by Boring Brick music video. It was one of my entryways into a more like pop punk emo world. And I had previously only listened to the Smiths and Joy Division. And I was like, wait, I love Hayley Williams, who's the singer. I love that she's just so I was a teenager, so emotional, so angry. And the aesthetic at the time was something that I was very interested in. And also just led me into this world of so many other musicians. It feels like a very, I don't know, just close to my heart kind of community.
Music. It hits us close to the heart and the brain. In This Is Your Brain on Music, neuroscientist Daniel J. Levitin, who teaches at McGill in Montreal, writes how music is much more than just entertainment. From an evolutionary perspective, music was a force that helped bond early human societies together, and it still does. It's no surprise that in the 1990s, at the dawn of the internet, it was music that millennials wanted to share on peer-to-peer or P2P networks like Napster. And of course, those millennial.com disruptors eventually evolved into the social media giants that we love to hate and hate to love today.
I think social media has completely changed how you do everything. A lot of the freelance clients I work with are older millennials, put it that way, people who are over 35. And they kind of were like, I thought I understood social media and I don't, and please help me because it changes every 2 weeks. It's like, it's insane. So I think that's a big part of it. Like to understand social platforms, you have to be on them all the time, which is very draining and not good for your mental health. But I think, I don't know. I think there's like different ways of approaching it. The online sort of route is definitely one way, but I really still value how many people can you get to show up in a room in person. I think that's more valuable than like numbers on a screen. And also when it comes down to it in more business language, like what's your conversion rate? If you have 50,000 followers, but you're getting 200 likes on your photo, like what's going on? Is it the algorithm, or are you just not connecting in a way that your audience likes?
So you're seeing social media in a sense as a necessary, potentially dangerous to your mental health kind of thing that you have to do to connect in meaningful ways. Even though you don't necessarily love it, that's what you do, right? You are a social media consultant.
Well, I do. I really like what I do. I like doing it for other people. I don't like it for myself.
Okay.
I don't think you have to have it. It is definitely one way of doing things. But if it is kind of like the most common way that I see people around my age expanding their businesses. Like I know one of the brands I work with, the majority of their sales, they get through Instagram.
And Steve, your artwork on Instagram is interesting.
It's also on Facebook. I don't share as much on Instagram. It's on Facebook. Yes, Facebook's for old people. Yeah, I get that all cliche thing.
So what's your view of because you're working with startups now, you're having to hustle,
right? As has been wisely said, using social media is an absolute essential. There's this phrase this guy ages ago told me called act of God marketing. And that's what these fools think, that they open up a restaurant here and God will send people to go to the restaurant. No, marketing is necessary in anything you do, regardless of whatever it is. Marketing is necessary. You've got to get a clientele. You've got to get an audience for it. To not approach it that way is completely backward. I have people that I've worked with on television and radio who since moved on and have like 800,000 followers on Instagram, and they regularly use that. And they're approached to market something. They don't go looking for it. It's like, well, somebody's got a friend of mine, Juvederm, doesn't usually use fillers, and so she's using her Instagram platform, her stories. And she's just, feeding that off into TikTok and all the other things. You start somewhere and you can just feed the same thing off to stories on all the other platforms. And, they approach her for doing this Juvederm 30-second thing, and she's marketing it. And I look at what I'm doing and go, what's the easiest way for me to market what it is I'm doing? Well, I'm going to hire her because she's got the audience. I need the audience. So I will, and she's worked on it. That's what she wanted to do. So I will parlay my friendship with her in business to get her to talk about my business. So I'm using, her SEO is insane for everything she does. I know I've done research about search engine optimization, and it takes a long time. I could use every trick in the book to have what it is that I'm doing come up as, very high on a Google search and, the SEO, but it'll take 6 months to do that kind of thing. Whereas in one click, she having 800,000 followers. And like you said, the what's the term you used?
The conversion rate.
Conversion rate for her is really high. So it would make sense for anybody who wants something to do to find people like that.
Influencer. The word's been around for a long time, but only recently has it become a viable occupation. I remember asking my daughter what she wanted to be when she grew up, and she said, a YouTuber. A few years later, at age 15, she had 100,000 followers on her Instagram fan account for Riverdale, and companies were paying her $10 every time she'd mentioned them in a post. She eventually moved on to nursing. Thank you, nursing. But online influencing is a mega business now, and a bit bewildering to a middle-aged dude like me, even one who pretends to know what he's doing. In the words of Grandpa Simpson, I'm old and confused. Steve, as we said before, we're both getting older. I'm the only one sporting a lovely gray beard here, but, and I'm not even close to getting a senior's discount at Shoppers Drug Mart or at Pharmaprix for that matter. But en tout cas, Steve, I wonder how you feel about aging and ageism, and have you, or are you starting to be discounted for an age?
It's funny that you would say that. The gentleman I was talking about from Montreal, who's also the Habs fan down the way, he's been in media as an executive for many, many years. He's since retired. We became friends, and he was curious as to when I officially departed the being in Toronto, having to be there 9 to 5, being exposed on TV, how I would feel eventually with that. With falling from grace, without people recognizing me all the time and not feeling relevant anymore. And I told him it wouldn't be a problem. I don't really care. I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm moving on from there. Everything has its expiration date. Less important for me because I didn't. I kind of always worked for myself. I was able to call my own shots, even though I worked for large corporations. I had that notoriety that I could kind of do what I wanted and ask for what I wanted, and generally I would get it. I had kind of a privileged position that way. But to herald what he said, it's true. Now I make a phone call; it's a little harder to get through to people. So the ageism. It's less ageism for me. It's more waning relevance because of age. Not just particularly being this age. It's that being this age makes you less relevant, and that is the only problem that I see.
Malaika, I'll turn it over to you. And I don't know if you ever partook in sort of the OK Boomer verbal or spoken or expressed on social media. But on the other end of that, do you feel discriminated against sometimes solely because of your age, or people maybe might not, they've treated you unfairly because you're young?
Yeah, I think because I'm like a young, femme presenting person, I get dismissed a lot. I'm 24 now, and working in music is pretty difficult because it's a lot of people who are like, "Oh, are you here with the band?" And it's like, "No, I'm producing this show." I think it is changing, but I think there is general dismissal of younger people on social media, and there's still kind of people don't take you as seriously if you're a digital creator in any sort of sense, where in reality, the numbers that people on TikTok do are insane. They're like incomparable. Like, how do you get 100 million views? Like, what? You can't get that in television in 4 minutes. It doesn't happen. I think that there is sort of a narrative being pushed by, let's say, bigger corporations that makes this gap bigger than I think it needs to, and is very divisive because there's people like you who are doing shows like this, and we want to talk to each other, but we feel like there is just such a culture gap and such an age gap, and how do we connect and all these things. It's a marketing technique, honestly, to be like, oh, these generations are so different. Let's pit them against each other.
You're right on about I think the generational distinctions are mostly marketing, and they're meant to put us in even smaller boxes. And social media, the analytics and the metrics and all that are not about opening, they're about closing. And
yes.
But in the spirit of, putting generations together, that's a perfect segue to this stupid game show I'm going to play right now, which is called The Generation Gap. Ultimately, it's about cooperation, not competition. But in a more accurate way, it's about competition. So, Malaika, which 1990 movie featured Patrick Swayze doing some pretty erotic pottery?
Man, I'm not sure.
Demi Moore also was in it, featured.
I was born in 1997, so
I know,
my
but
knowledge
sometimes
of
this stuff.
This is not great.
But okay, Steve, easy one.
Ghost.
Okay, I'm going to whistle a theme song from a famous TV show. Do, 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 do,
That's not whistling.
do, do, do,
That's
do,
not
do.
whistling.
I know. I'm just like, maybe my whistling didn't
man.
make it through the Zoom algorithm. A famous animated TV show still on the air after 69,000 years. Steve Anthony?
Simpsons.
Okay.
Simpsons.
All right. That's okay. So I won't go deeper than that. I see that I'm going to have to throw you some softballs here, Malaika.
I also never really watched The Simpsons for some reason.
That's
Just
okay.
never.
It's a just so you know, not my generation, but their cultural touchstone are quotes from The Simpsons and scenes and Seinfeld.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Seinfeld,
remember that episode of the Seinfeld when?
yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, The Simpsons.
Yeah.
I'm of that age, and I'm sorry about that. And Steve, I'd say that like Steve Anthony, Seinfeld left the air at the top of their game, right?
Thank
that
you.
was one. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, maybe more politics here. Name a female British prime minister.
Oh.
Hint: there were two. One more
Oh my
recent.
God, I'm like remembering her name, but I'm remembering it wrong.
The
and I
Iron
don't
Lady
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but
was Margaret.
I want to. No, I'm going to say it wrong. I'm like, I don't.
I'm not even going to give
Go
this
for
to
it.
Steve.
You're
Just
not gonna
say
get
it wrong. Say it wrong. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
because I'm thinking of an author instead, and I know
Not
it's
Margaret
wrong.
Atwood. No.
Yeah, I know. That's who I'm thinking of, but I know that it's wrong.
Okay.
No. Most people don't know this. She was actually the Prime Minister of England for a very short period of time, Margaret Atwood. No.
So
No, but
Margaret
I-
Thatcher and Steve, who's the more recent one? last few
you
years.
have me. Boris
Theresa
Johnson
May.
is a lady. Isn't Boris Johnson
He's
a
got
woman?
hair that could be construed sometimes in a bit of a bizarre.
Kim Campbell? Oh, no, that's Canadian. I don't
Our
know.
one Canadian Prime Minister, by the way, Malaika, Kim Campbell, for a very short period. Okay, you're gonna get this. What does side A and side B mean? This is a bit of a music thing.
Of a record.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect. Side A. Okay, there's your first point here. What is a banana bike?
Oh, is it one of the bikes that like swoops
Yeah, it has
down?
a seat like that. Yeah. What is a TV dinner?
It's like a microwave dinner that I assume, eat in front of the TV.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, name a Madonna song.
Oh my God. This is horrible. Now all of the Madonna songs have left my brain. Like a Virgin.
There you go. Okay. And finally, name a dance fad from the 20th century.
Um,
I'll give you a hint. Come on, baby.
That was the first one you gave me. What? Yeah.
Does the twist
Yeah,
count?
there you go. I was going to do it, but my green screen's getting all weird. Okay, good. Clap, 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 clap. Studio applause. Steve, Anthony, what was the first video ever played on MTV? Not much.
Was it Video Killed the Radio Star?
Yes. Bonus points by One Hit Wonder.
Yeah, no. I can't remember.
The Buggles.
Bubbles, right?
MTV did not play this famous recording artist's music videos until the label, CBS, threatened to pull every other artist off the air until MTV finally played
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson's Thriller. They would not play it. Okay. Which brand has recently paired up LGBTQ plus icons Lil Nas X and Elton John for their ad campaign?
Oh, Uber Eats.
Uber Eats, yeah. What? What Disney TV show made Selena Gomez famous?
I don't know.
Malaika, do you know this?
Wizards of Waverly Place, I think.
There you go. Bonus
What was
point.
it?
Wizards of Waverly Place.
Yeah.
What TV show made Miley Cyrus famous?
Hannah Montana.
Name a YouTube influencer.
Pootie Pie.
And Malaika, name another one. I'll give you another point here.
Oh, I'm going to find her name because she's
Are
really
you going to Google her now?
great. No, I'm just Emily Mariko. No, I'm just pulling up my email because I get her newsletter.
Oh, okay.
But Emily Mariko is lovely.
Great. Okay. Name a movie, Steve, that Zendaya appeared in.
June.
Wow. Okay. I haven't even seen that one. That's okay. Well done. Nice. What does GOAT, GOAT, stand for?
Greatest of all time.
Ah, you're good. You're like connected.
Not only do I know everything I know everything you know.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. That is the most pompous thing you could possibly say, but I'll do that.
Okay. TikTok master, who is Charlie D'Amelio?
Oh, gosh.
Malaika's sitting there going, I know this.
Well, you have it.
Go, Malaika.
She's Dixie D'Amelio's sister, and they have, I don't know if they're still the most followed people on the platform, but they literally broke the UX of TikTok because they had so many followers at one point.
Steve, you're going to know this. Billie Eilish's producer is also her
brother and husband. No, brother.
His name?
Sorry, I slide that in there.
That in there. Good thing I
Yeah.
have the edit capability. What's his name?
Oh, I forget.
Malaika? Phineas.
Phineas?
I'm
Yeah.
going to give you that point. This One Direction star created the 2019 hit Watermelon Sugar.
Oh, Mills. What's his name?
Malaika?
Harry Styles.
Yep.
Harry
Sorry, I need to
Styles.
give points to
Malaika
Malaika.
Styles. Yeah, Harry
It's
Styles.
okay.
I did know that.
Final question for Steve Anthony. What does LMR stand for?
I'm usually really good at these.
I'm not going to give you LOL.
No, but I'm usually really
I know
good
how good you are. That's why I gave you a hard one. Malaika?
I actually don't know.
Steve?
Let me rejoice. No.
Is that your algorithm? You get the Christian Christian TikTok. It's like my recent.
Oh.
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
Like my
my
recent, yeah. So again, I had to dig because I knew you were a pop culture icon, and I knew Malaika, you work in this field, so I had to find
Okay,
things
here's
that
back at you. FYP.
for your people.
No. for your poop. No. It's a TikTok term.
Okay. Wow, I did not know that. Okay.
It's your For You page. It's part of your algorithm.
Okay. This has been wonderful and I'm sure exhausting for both of you. And I really appreciate you both. So thank you, Malaika. Thank you, Steve, for taking part in this.
Thank you so much. It's been
And
great
you know,
talking to
Rick-
you both.
Rick, you'll fix it in the mix.
I certainly tried to fix it, and I hope you liked the mix. Thanks to Steve Anthony and Malaika Astorga, my intergenerational guests today. I'm Rick Miller, and I wrote, recorded, and edited this episode with multimedia from my team at Kidoons. For more about our onstage and online projects, visit kidoons.com or boomtheshow.com. Thanks also to my partners on this podcast, Leap, an online community where life experience meets innovation, created by CABI, the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. For more info, visit cabi.com/leap. And thank you, my listeners, for helping this project grow so quickly. Please tell someone about this or other episodes you liked and send any questions, comments, feedback to me. It's hugely valuable to hear from you, and I promise I'll respond to everyone except a bot. You can find me at RickMillerActor on Twitter or Instagram, or RickMiller.ca. And hey, in a polarized world, you have a choice. Build a wall or build a bridge. Build bridges, not walls.
Xing the gap.